thanks for all the feedback on the bucket locking PR. I just wanted to raise a couple of more issues that are still open, and maybe we get them to closure just in the discussion. So one thing is, so in AWS, there is a restriction that the source and destination and log bucket should be in the same account. I think it simplifies the charging or the cost there. So there won't be a question of who's paying for the storage in the log bucket. I don't think this applies to our case. So I'm wondering whether we need to enforce this or not.
Well, I mean, I think it depends on whether our use cases are different than AWS's.
So what I don't understand, if you don't want a different account to write into your log bucket, don't allow them. It's very simple. Or on the contrary, you have to explicitly allow them to do that if you want to. So why do we need a hard-coded restriction for that?
Well, you have to explicitly allow the service principal, and you can filter on source account. But if you are just granting service principal, then maybe it's helpful that you're guaranteed that only your account can actually trigger that.
I see. So you're saying it's to simplify the policy. Yeah, but I mean, what most people they would copy paste the policy from documentation and just use it.
Yeah, and I guess I'm confused why policy needs that filtering if only your account can ever use it.
Yeah. So I mean, the use case I was thinking of is, again, I mean, we have users that could be mapped to different applications, the same account, but in theory, it could be different accounts. Now, the use case I was thinking about is not really an admin use case, but if you have one application that provides the backup and you can opt in to use this functionality. So it could be that be a different account for the backup and a different account for the applications using it. So if they allow you to use it because you opt in for that and there's some arrangement to do that, then you can. So I'm not sure why we need this restriction when the actual policy kind of take care of that.
I tend to agree. It's just that if we're consciously choosing different behavior than AWS, we want to make sure that it's clearly documented.
Yes, I'll have to document that. There's another thing where I'm deviating from what they say. I'm not allowing the source and destination bucket to be the same. They allow that. They say it's really bad, but for some reason they allow that. So they're like, allow it, but say don't do that. I don't understand why. I just block that. Another thing where I deviate, but I think I can fix that in the future, is that they allow server-side default encryption, because it's possible to have the log bucket encrypted if the server knows exactly how the encryption works. I don't allow that, just because I just didn't do that, and I can do that in the future. So this is a restriction that I can later on remove, so I don't see that as an issue. The one thing that I didn't do, and it's kind of thing that maybe going to be a little difficult to add in the future is that I don't calculate quota for the log bucket. I mean, it's not a very critical requirement, but I suspect that might be difficult to add later on after people are kind of used to the fact that there's no quota limitations, and all of a sudden there will be. So here I'm not 100% sure whether this has to go right away or could be done in the future.
Well, even if logging doesn't check, it could push a user over their quota and cause other writes to fail. So I think it's worth checking from the start.
Okay.
I guess the question is, what should bucket logging do if it fails because of quota? Is it just throwing things out?
Yeah, I mean, it should fail in the same way. Yeah, I mean, well,
Same way
that's also,
permission checks would fail.
yeah, so it really depends. Like if we're using a journal mode, then that can fail the actual original operation because they require logging. If it's standard mode, it fails and it goes away. So like anything else that can fail in standard mode. The maybe I do have a question though regarding quota. So should I calculate the quota on every write or only when I commit into the bucket? Because when I'm doing the writes, it doesn't really use any of the bucket quota at that point.
Probably just for the commit that would actually add a object to their bucket.
Okay. Then in this case, like the failure handling is more tricky. I mean, this can happen because of an actual write, or this can also happen because of an external operation trying to do the commit. Yeah, but I guess this. I mean, this makes more sense as this is the actual point where the data it belongs to a specific bucket.
And there's not too much of a time difference between when a log record is written and when it eventually gets flushed, right?
Well, there could be a significant. I mean, depends. It depends how you set up the system. It could be like an hour later. It's really whatever you define. There could be a big time difference.
Oh, sorry. Who configures this?
The user can configure the time, or the user can call explicit command to doing the commit.
And that's part of AWS's bucket
No,
logging config?
no,
It's an
they don't.
extension.
This is an extension. They have nothing of that sort. They have no guarantee on any timeliness of the operation. Not clear also when they actually do the charging, because again they probably log everything to some side file or storage, and then they periodically do the bucket logging. So that's a good question of when exactly they're attributing the storage to the bucket owner.
Okay. Well,
Um,
it sounds like journal mode is going to be tricky then. I mean, quota checks are they would be expensive to do in a consistent way, so they're just based on a quota cache. So different RGWs may have a different view of how much is in the bucket, and so we might do a quota check against smaller numbers, and it looks fine when we're journaling, but then when we're doing the commit, it might be different.
right.
I mean,
But
is this? I mean, we should do the best. Why is this not a best effort sort of problem space? I mean, bucket logging. Go ahead.
I thought that was the semantic of journal mode, which we've invented to be
yeah,
the guaranteed version.
Well, I mean, even okay, but intersecting with quota, I mean, it's kind of an unexpected interaction for something like the bucket logging feature.
hold on. But how is that different than, regardless of bucket logging? How is that if the quota is cached locally in the RGW? This can happen for just a put object, right?
Yes. The difference that I see is that we would enforce one thing on the put object and then another when trying to actually expose the object, commit the object.
No, I'm talking about a regular put object, unrelated to bucket logging. If the quota information is cached on each RGW, then you can have kind of
You're right.
inaccuracies there, regardless. So this is not different.
And it does happen.
The difference as I see it is that the put object in journal mode just can't guarantee that the commit is going to succeed if it doesn't have control over that.
Well, the logging event cannot be guaranteed, right?
Yes.
The event, the object, the result returned to the client is correct.
Yeah, I see. So, I mean, one way is to do that whenever I actually log a record and not when I'm committing the object to the bucket. Although
Or
again,
journal mode at least, yeah, I think that would make sense.
although I mean this could be incorrect as well. It could be that everything is fine when I'm actually doing the commit, then I'm actually over quota.
However we do this, we should not make this less efficient in the general case in order to make quota more correct. That's my position.
So I mean, if the invariant of journal mode is that accepting a write operation guarantees that we're going to record it, then I think journal mode would do the quota check only on the put object and not on the commit.
Mm-hmm.
But the normal mode might just check on commit.
I see. Yeah. And I mean, the worst case is that we're going to go over quota when we commit, because that's going to be like in later phases.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. It has like, I guess the whole quota feature is designed in a way that you can go over quota. So you're like in the favor of the user. You can err in the favor of the user, more or less.
I think that's correct.
Agreed.
Okay, so that would go follow the same lines. So I think it should be fine. Okay. I think these were all my questions. So I will add the quota feature as part of this phase. And would not impose the account restriction. I'll have to document that. And Anything that is not mandatory now, like doing the encryption, I can postpone to later phases because I'll just improve the feature without creating backward compatibility issues.
Yeah, applying encryption sounds kind of tricky.
Yeah. So for now, if the log bucket has any encryption on it, I just don't allow it to be a log bucket. I think that's all for me.
You don't allow put bucket logging to add a configuration, or you fail the.
I checked at the configuration stage. Like, I don't allow put bucket logging. I mean, in theory, you can add encryption after that. You can make other modifications to the log bucket that are not good after that. The only thing I'm constantly checking is the policy. I'm not checking the other things.
Okay. So if put bucket logging happens before put bucket encryption, then we would just write in unencrypted objects. That doesn't sound like the end of the world. Marcus, Sina, do you guys have opinions on that?
I think it's fine as a temporary state, but I suspect it to be revisited.
I guess if I add the actual encryption support later, I'll probably have to fix it as well. So constantly check that.
Isn't the client gonna complain that why do I have something unencrypted while I asked for?
Yeah, they will complain, but then we'll fix it. So
Yeah, I mean, no, in terms of if we stop it, then they can fix it. Like they can consciously then create a bucket which is not encrypted and then right there, so they are aware of the contents are not encrypted. But if we allow that silently to write unencrypted to an encrypted bucket, which was the user thought that, for example, he put a put bucket encryption configuration and he thought that, okay, everything is going to be encrypted, and then the confusion might happen at some point, and then maybe security wise they might be complaining why this is dispersed.
yeah, so I understand. So, but that's a new feature, and this is exactly. So I'm kind of I can't foresee for a new feature all the future bugs and issues. This is kind of a bug that people may open in the future. But as long as the bug fixing doesn't break the feature, so if any future changes that I kind of foresee are going to create compatibility issues and break the features and would force me to add tons of configuration, then I'm trying to do that ahead of time. This specific thing, I mean, could be an issue. I'm not saying not.
I mean, just speaking as from an experience, usually as long as the API talks like transparently say that, okay, this is failing, this is succeeding, the user is happy to act accordingly by the error. But if silence is something is happening that they are not aware of, then that is where they usually complain a lot, that why I wasn't aware, like why didn't it fail, which I could now understand that this is working differently. They usually don't read the docs. That's the thing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
To me, put bucket logging is kind of the only place that we can return a good error message to the user to make that obvious, right? And if we're talking about enabling encryption after that, I mean, can put bucket encryption fail if there's a bucket logging configuration? I guess it would be a bucket logging configuration on
Right.
some other
So-
bucket.
Right. Yeah, that's I think I added like a list of source buckets for the destination bucket just for debuggability. So I could go back and check them. But I mean, what I can do is, I mean, kind of similar to how I check with the permissions. So I constantly check the permissions, not just when I'm setting them up. And I'm just failing the operation, and I can do the same for the for the case of the encryption. So I can check if the log bucket is encrypted, and then whenever I'm trying to write to an object that eventually is going to be there, and this object I'm writing unencrypted, so I can just fail that and reply saying, I don't know exactly what kind of error code, but giving some error code that I couldn't do the operation. Then it depends whether this is journal mode or this is the standard mode, whether the error would trickle back to the client or just be logged as a message saying I couldn't do bucket logging. Yeah, so I can add that check. I don't think that's going to be too problematic.
All right. I did create a tracker issue and linked it in the agenda, tracking the future work for supporting encrypted buckets there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anything else on bucket logging? There's a link to the PR in the agenda. I'd encourage other folks that are interested to help review. All right, moving on to Kernal.
Yeah, just a general thought actually. We've seen issues in the suspend workflow, like we're trying to suspend a user, and while looking at the code, it tries to go and suspend the buckets, each of the buckets, basically. And basically what's happening is we have a slow operation or slow OSD in the back end, and then basically when we're trying to suspend a user which has done some abnormal operations on the cluster, we try to suspend the user. What we found is our suspending a user is taking more than like 30 minutes for us in one of the use cases where the user had 6,000 buckets. So I was curious to know like what's the reasoning behind disabling the buckets as well. I understand there is a disable flag for the user metadata, but then we also go and explicitly disable all of the buckets as well as a part of it. So that I had another follow-up question to it, but this was the first question. Like, what is there a reasoning behind trying to disable this? And currently, at least we do this serially, like one bucket at a time, which is like taking more than 30 minutes for us in case where the user has way too many buckets going on. And we also see timeouts, basically if there is a slow ops going on at the back at the Rados. So that's not helping us either. So just wanted to know the rationale behind that suspend logic, if anybody knew.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the suspend feature predates my involvement with the project. I mean, I guess maybe it makes sense to, like, suspending the user will prevent it from authenticating for requests, but other users could still write to their buckets. I guess that's the thing that it's trying to prevent.
Right, that's what was my follow-up question actually. So we see that if a user is disabled and it has shared a bucket with some other user, because of disabling that bucket, suspending the buckets, now the other user also cannot access that bucket. So is that could be the reasoning behind reasoning behind disabling the bucket or suspending the bucket? I mean, yeah.
Maybe we should have two separate commands, one to suspend the user and one to suspend a bucket. And if admin really wants to suspend their buckets, they can have a loop that does that.
Makes sense. Yeah, I just wanted to know if people have any other use case because of that. So if not, then I'll just try to put a tracker, and then it should be a trivial fix because it just goes loop through all the buckets and tries to suspend them, which is basically just taking forever in our case.
Yeah, I would agree that that's the wrong default behavior.
Sounds good. Thank you. I'll just open a tracker for that case and then yeah, post the PR soon. Thank you.
I think that will help for account suspension too, because
Yep,
then if
correct.
they want to suspend account buckets, they can do that separately.
Makes sense. Yes, that yeah, that will be follow-up. Fair enough. Yeah.
Like for the account suspend, you also need to address the issue that let's say some IAM user got the temporary key for 12 hours, the max limit. Like how do you figure out those and suspend them as well, right? So that's a little bit more tricky than suspending a RGW user. Like thinking ahead.
I'm not clear. Are you talking about assume role or pre-signed URLs or what?
Let's say we shared some resources, a bucket in this case, with another IAM user. It assumed to like SDS got the SDS token, like which is valid for 12 hours, right? So in that case, like does it affect like account suspension would be like trickier than regular RGW user, or is it the same scenario?
So with account support, assume role does it does load the roles account, so it could check for suspension.
How about the existing ones that got the SDS key prior to suspension?
Well,
They
you're
should.
having a topic that's general to this kind of system, token-based system, but I mean, I believe I've never audited this, but does our implementation not conform to the duration seconds options defined in AWS, which could be as little as 15 minutes?
Yeah, just wondered whether it may.
I think we do, but for RGW auth, there's the role applier, which is the thing that handles the assumed roles, and that knows about the account, so could check for suspension there, even if the session hasn't expired.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
So yeah, we'll want to make sure that the account suspend feature handles that. Let me know if you have any questions about where it is in the code.
Yeah, sounds good. I think. So, do we have any plans to add suspension for accounts, or is there can we open like a feature request on Tracker for that, or maybe there's a pending one I didn't check. Like just this discussion just reminded me of we don't have account suspension yet, as far as I know.
Yeah, Krunal raised this in last week's meeting. I
Okay,
don't know if we have a tracker. Krunal, could I ask you to create one if there isn't one?
And yeah, last week I wasn't here. If there's a tracker, then I think it looks like there's a tracker.
Oh
And
yeah,
I'll open
I found it.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good then.
All right. Anything else on this? Any final topics? Maybe one final thing to mention in terms of upstream releases. It sounds like we're going to try to freeze for Tentacle in the next month or two, maybe. And so we'll want to think about what features are in progress that we're going to want to land for that.
Makes sense. Also, I would like to remind you to please do any backports assigned to you. Or at least the bug fix related ones.
Adam, could I ask you to maybe create a doc or at least like a list of the features that we're targeting so that we can make sure that everything's wrapped up in time?
Yes, I will have to ask other people in order for me to do that, but I will get on doing that.
Okay. And Sina, I think that might affect some of your work in progress around multi-site, at least as far as like backward compatible changes go. It seems like we'll want some release that adds a feature that controls all that stuff. And so there might be some stuff that we won't want to merge for Tentacle, but after.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, if the other Zoom group replication is not gonna, yeah, it's not gonna be delivered for Tentacle, right? We should take them out. I can help to identify them if needed. Sure.
Yeah, that would be great. And then we can take anything that doesn't fall in that category ahead of time. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll call it here.
Thank you.
Thank you.